Today we're in London and we're riding a double-decker all the way to Singapore. No, not that one, but the double-decker of the skies, the Airbus A380. Come pop a squat and tap that little thumb icon as we talk about the good, the slightly not so good, and my overall impressions on board my very first flight with Singapore Airlines in a full lie-flat seat. Oh, and instead of paying the $4,000 plus in cash, I paid less than $200, which I'll be sure to show you how at the end of this video. But first, shower time. Much better. Now we fix this. Now that we're squeaky clean, let's go grab some food. Since we're departing Heathrow Terminal 2, we actually have not one, not two, but 3 lounges to choose from. Singapore's Silvercrest Lounge, Air Canada's Maple Leaf Lounge, and the United Club Lounge. And since we're flying in business, we'll have access to all 3 lounges. If we weren't flying business, you could also access these lounges by way of having Star Alliance Gold. First, let's check out the Singapore Lounge. Overall, phenomenal food selection. I mean, come on, it's Singapore Airlines. However, the seating choices, meh. This place was crazy crowded. If I'm being perfectly honest, I've seen priority pass lounges with more space. Next up, we have the Air Canada Lounge. Bummer, we just checked out the Singapore Airlines Lounge there, and I wanted to come across the way to the Air Canada one, but unfortunately I can't get in because I don't fly for another 4 hours, and you have to be within 3 hours of departure to get in there. It would have been nice to go and see what it is. It looks like a beautiful lounge inside, but I guess we're gonna have to save it for another time that we're flying through London Heathrow. For now though, let's go ahead and check out the 3rd Star Alliance Lounge, United Club Lounge, which I thought was actually the best one of the day, mostly due to having an abundance of space. And come on, look at some of these phenomenal views out the window. Crack a Diet Coke, take a few sips, and it wasn't too long before it was time to head off to the gate. Stepping on board, I'm immediately greeted by name and directed over to my seat. And all I can say is, wow, it never ceases to amaze me, just the sheer size of this aircraft. And for today's flight, we'll be seated in 11K. Pro tip for the audience, I wasn't able to get myself in there, but the bulkhead rows are actually row 91 and 96 that gives you some additional foot space. The cabin upstairs is arranged in a 1-2-1 configuration, meaning everybody gets aisle access. And if you're a couple, I highly recommend going for the middle seats that are in row 11, 91, 96. They are slightly closer together and it kind of can give off the vibe of a double bed. I actually had thought they were double beds, taking after Qatar Airways Q Suites, but it looks like the partition in the middle is a little bit higher, which is a bit of a bummer. Before long, the flight attendants came around with pre-departure drinks. Now, I am absolutely a champagne guy, but at 2 a.m., I decided to go with the OJ. Now let's check out this seat. I found it very spacious to sit in, but I could see how it gets a little bit cramped for someone a bit taller. And that's because the foothold is off to the side. So when you're sleeping, you either have to sleep at an angle or sleep curled up, which if you're a bigger person, that probably isn't too comfortable for a flight that's over 12 hours. I found storage overall to be decent. This compartment off to the side was especially convenient to kind of just throw things in. Right above that storage compartment, you had your outlets plus USB-A and a terminal for tap to pay. It was a pretty unique tray table that came out of the armrest with the push of a button, along with all these other touch controls. However, I found the touch controls to be a bit hard to use. They felt like haptic buttons that had pretty poor sensitivity and feedback, so I wasn't always sure whether or not I had punched the button or not. You also had the smallest of armrests that you would flip down and it would just be enough for a smidgen of an elbow. To round it all out, there was a bit of nastiness that I didn't initially notice, but I'll point that out once we get airborne. And speaking of, it wasn't too long before we pushed back and we were in the air. I really want to express how excited I was to finally get a chance to try Singapore Airlines in a premium cabin. My only other experience was back in 2018 flying economy, and even that I found to be amazing. So I could only imagine what it would be like finally now in business class. And I didn't have to wait long because pretty soon after we were in the air, dinner service was starting. Now this menu is pretty extensive as you can see, but my pro tip here would to actually use Singapore Airlines Book the Cook program. This program is 100% a must because it allows you a much wider selection of meals than what's going to be catered aboard the flight. Although looking at the onboard menu, the food did not look like it would have disappointed had you not pre-booked your meal. We started things off with the signature chicken satay, which was amazeballs. If I could have drank this peanut sauce for the rest of the meal, I absolutely would have elected to. The app and salad, though, was interesting. I wasn't too sure what to make of it. It was good, yes, but it just felt maybe a little out of place following up that amazing chicken satay. For the mains, I did book the cook and I went with the steak. Singapore Airlines absolutely nailed it. And honestly, what more could you ask for on board a flight? I will say, service was good given the capacity of the flight. It seemed pretty booked out in the upper deck, but even still, there was a pretty noticeable lag time in between courses, especially here between the mains and desserts. Sitting 11K, I was the first business class passenger to be served. And I would say there was a good 40 minutes when I finished the starter to getting my appetizer. So I guess that might beg the question, if everyone's in business, is anyone in business? Kidding, of course. But I couldn't help but think if you had paid the $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 cash for the ticket, would you have been okay with this level of service? And after wrapping up mains, it was time for dessert. I opted for the tiramisu thinking that I would get a small little slice of tiramisu, but what came out was an absolute log. Very good, but definitely did not expect how much would be put on my plate. After dinner, it was time to get some shut-eye. A bit of a bummer to point out is that Singapore Airlines doesn't offer PJs in business class, or at least I wasn't offered any. And this might have been the very first business class long-haul flight that I took where I didn't receive any pajamas. So let's go brush our teeth and check out the bathroom. Overall, nice bathroom. And it's nice to see that you've got some extra amenities in here if you didn't already have them in your amenity kit, or if you needed any extras, which I definitely took one or two. Speaking of amenity kit, let's check out today's amenity kit. So this amenity kit is from Penhaligons, and what I really like about it is it just gives you the essentials, and anything extra you can just get directly in the bathroom. You've got face lotion, lip balm, as well as hand lotion, and for anyone who needs a dental kit or a comb, you would be able to get that directly from the bathroom. And I thought the carrying case was especially useful. This is something I could totally see myself using day to day. Back from the bathroom, now that we're funky fresh, time to hop into bed, which I ended up making. I'm sure I could have had one of the flight attendants do it, but honestly, I didn't mind. And night-night. After a very few peaceful hours of rest, I woke up to some slight hunger pangs, so I thought it was the perfect time to order a classic airplane ramen. Now, you know Singapore Airlines zhuzhed it up a bit. I ended up going with the tom yum flavor, and honestly, it was as good as the mains we had earlier with the addition of these small little shrimp. The only thing missing might have been a poached egg and some seaweed, but we'll give them a pass here. Following snack time, I decided to pop back up and enjoy some Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Oh, and how could I forget? The internet. So on board this flight, as long as you're a Chris Flyer member, which is free to sign up, you have free access to internet. If you're sitting in a premium cabin, you also have free access to internet. And checking the speeds here, we had a whopping 14.8 megabyte per second download speed, which is plenty enough to get some work done. As far as entertainment on this flight, I found it pretty extensive across movies as well as TV shows. And you could either control the in-flight entertainment via touchscreen, which I wouldn't have recommended just because it's such a far reach. Instead, I would have opted for the handheld controller right next to your seat. With a few hours left in the flight, it was time for meal number 2. And it was at this time, with some daylight in the cabin, I noticed what was behind my head. That nastiness. It looks a little stained, it looks a little bit grimy. I just couldn't believe that that's what I was sleeping next to, sitting next to this entire time. Anyway, onto the meal. We were served the same app as our first meal, which I still didn't really get, but hey, it is what it is. And I chose to book the cook and I went with the roast duck, which was absolutely delicious. Honestly, comparable to something I could have found back in Boston's Chinatown. And for dessert, we wrapped it up with a hazelnut and white chocolate cake. Comparing this to dinner last night, I'd say service was definitely noticeably faster, which was very much appreciated. And about an hour after the meal service concluded, we were nearing the end of our journey. Overall, this was an amazing flight. The seat incredibly comfortable. But I couldn't help feel as if something might have been missing. The first thing I noticed was I didn't feel as if I got that standout Singapore service that I was so anticipating. To be fair, I'd only ever flown them in economy way back in the day, and the service in economy blew all the other carriers out of the water. And that might be on me. Maybe my expectations were too high. Since then, I have flown one of the top business products in the sky, Qatar Airways Business, and so perhaps my expectations might have been set a bit higher. Then again, it is Singapore, it is their national flag carrier. And the only other thing to call out was perhaps how dirty the seat was just next to my head, which that's a quick fix. Just get maintenance in there and clean it. And it's not something you're gonna notice on a nighttime flight, but during the day, as evidenced by some of those shots, you definitely could tell. Overall though, I would 100% take this route again. Now, as for how I booked this, I used 90,000 miles, booked via Air Canada. And this was actually leg 2 of a 3-leg journey from Boston to Heathrow to Singapore and ultimately Bangkok. And that's a wrap on the video, folks. It's been a good one, a little bit different, but I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.